I don't know about you, but I think that the best movies tell a really great story. And usually they have a twist, in my experience, that you don't see coming. In my teens and my early 20s, I know this is hard to imagine, but I would literally sit on a couch and sob watching movies like Titanic or Armageddon. I mean, you guys, the love, the sacrifice, it was epic. It was also epically sad. Or even like more modern movies, the stories that pull me in are the ones that really put me on the edge of my seat the whole time. Like, I'm no spoilers, but the movie Project Hail Mary. I mean, the whole movie, you're like, is this a story of sacrifice or is this a story of rescue? You're going to have to go see it to find out. But there's such great movies. But at some point I realized I actually don't like movies where people die. I don't like movies that make me sad. I don't like to cry and blubber for entertainment. Who does that? I mean, my dramatic teenage self, she was very dramatic, would have really liked that, but I don't. Because here's the problem. Real life, I discovered, had enough endings that I couldn't control. I don't remember the exact moment that I made that kind of transition in my life, but I do remember it was somewhere around the time when I was 24. I was living over on the west side on the peninsula, and I was driving to a hospital in downtown Seattle to say goodbye to my friend who was dying from cancer. And just 3 days earlier, she had called me to go to a Sound of Music sing-along on a whim. And in a snap, everything changed. Her organs were shutting down. She didn't even recognize me. And it was my moment to say goodbye. 20 years old. That's how old she was. There was no comfort in a lifelong lived. There was no wonderful, poignant goodbye that I got to hold on to. It was just me coming up against something that I couldn't control. Suddenly, real life didn't feel like a story anymore. A sad ending didn't feel like a moment on the couch. And I think when those moments come, when we come face to face with our limits, what we can't control, what we can't undo, that's where the real tension is, isn't it? We all live with this quiet reality that every story that we know eventually ends in loss. I mean, think about it. Every biography, they die. It's pretty inevitable. I know you had to think about that for a second. They all end the same way. Every life runs up against something we can't fix, outwork, outrun. And whether we admit it or not, I think that we spend most of our lives trying to deal with that. And that's why John chapter 20, the Gospel of John chapter 20, matters so much. In the Gospel of John, up until this point, we've followed the story of Jesus. We've seen him speaking truth to crowds, performing miracles, revealing who he is. He's drawing people in. He's even sparking some tension and some opposition. And by the time we reach chapter 19, which is the gruesome story of Jesus' painful and shameful crucifixion and death on a cross, it feels like the story is falling apart. I mean, he's dead. If the Gospel of John has ended in chapter 19 with laying his body in a tomb, it would have been a compelling story. It would have been a man of extraordinary character who's making bold claims, who's dying a sacrificial death. Memorable, you could call it, inspiring, even moving. But ultimately, it's just another story that ends the same way every other story does. More importantly, I think if Jesus stayed in the grave, then his claims collapse and his teachings become idealistic but ultimately unrealistic, and death has the final word. But John chapter 20 tells us that that's not how the story ends. So let's take a look together. John chapter 20, if you have a Bible, I would love for you to turn there. If you have an app, a Bible app, YouVersion is a wonderful one, but the words will also be on the screen. John chapter 20, we'll read the first 10 verses to start. It says this: Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple. That's John who's writing it. He'll refer to himself as the other disciple multiple times in this passage. It's John, okay? Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. And she said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him." Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. They were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter. It's like a little bit of a, like the other disciple outran Peter. Sorry, I just noticed that. And reached the tomb first. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then, they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Then they went home. So it's interesting, as I told you, that I like dramatic, stories. Young Amanda really loved her drama. But this is like the least dramatic gospel telling of this story. He's kind of laying out the facts here. And it starts with this early morning discovery. And John's story, as you'll find out, is really mostly about Mary. And we'll get into that more in a minute. But I love where it starts because it says Mary's day begins early in the morning while it was still dark. That phrase just jumps off the page to me because I think that that's true physically. It's telling us she's there very early in the morning. But I think it's also true a little bit metaphorically. She's coming grieving. She's coming as a follower of Jesus who feels like her whole world has been shattered. She's in the dark. And here she comes. Other Gospels mention other women being there too, but again, John's story is mostly about Mary, so he only mentions her. It says it's the first day of the week. It's Sunday. It was customary, as you may know, for a body that was laid in a tomb to be perfumed or put spices on it for 3 days, 3 consecutive days after the death. But because Jesus died on a Friday, right before Sabbath began, she wasn't able to do that until Sunday morning. So she's getting there early because it's gone a whole day. And it says the first thing she notices is that the tomb is open. I have a picture for you of a garden tomb that's in Jerusalem that some people actually think is the one. So I've actually been here, the one that Jesus was buried in. We don't really know. But these tombs were covered by a circular stone that had a groove in the ground that was rolled. And they were often like 1 to 2 tons. That's how heavy they were. So it's not surprising that she's surprised that the tomb is open, that the stone has been rolled away. And so it says immediately, Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, because every gospel has an account of the resurrection story, the Gospel of Matthew tells us that the tomb has been sealed by the authorities for this reason. We'll get to that more in a minute. It's been rolled away when she finds it. And so she runs to find Peter and John and says to them they've taken the body. There's no indication of who they is, though I think, based on the disciples' quick reaction, it's probably not them, so I think we can make some assumptions there. And so they react and they take off, but she likely thought the body had been removed by Jesus' enemies. She would have called that the Jewish hierarchy at that time. But again, other gospel accounts say that the Jewish authorities and other authorities, the Roman authorities too, had sealed and posted guards at the tomb to keep the body from being stolen because this was such a high-profile death. So then it says Peter and John ran to the tomb. So you notice this is the second time in this passage that running is mentioned, and much like Justin, grown men did not run in that culture. He hates running. He'll tell you that. I'm not throwing him under the bus. It's an open secret, friends. But they're running. So now it's been mentioned twice because it was considered very undignified. The only time it was used when they were talking about like metaphorically running or athletics. But they've been activated. John's trying to tell us in the simplest way that they've been activated by very powerful emotions. They want to know what is going on, so they run. Whether they believe her or not, they're going to go to this tomb and find out for themselves. It says Peter's older and slower. It's a little flex on John's part, and probably heavier. But John arrives first, but it says does not go in. But Peter does. He immediately goes in. And the way that's described there seems really simple to us, but the original construction of the language kind of indicates that basically these linen cloths that they'd been wrapped in were kind of still in their shape. Not like someone had sat up and tore them off, but just like the body had disappeared. That's the best indication, except for the cloth that covered the face, which had been folded up neatly and set aside. I mean, they're very curious details that John chooses to include here. Curious details that make a grave robbing less likely. And finally, John walks into the tomb, sees these details, realizes what has happened, and the text says he saw and believed. But let's keep reading, because this next section is my favorite part. John 20, verse 11. It says, Mary, sometime later, Mary was standing outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. Dear woman, why are you crying? The angels asked her. Because they've taken away my Lord, she replied, and I don't know where they've put him. She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. Dear woman, why are you crying? Jesus asked her. Who are you looking for? She thought he was the gardener. Sir, she said, if you've taken him away, tell me where you've put him and I'll go get him. Mary, Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, Rabboni, which is Hebrew for teacher. We'll come back to the end in just a second. But sometime later, Mary's back at the tomb. She's looking in, she's crying, and she sees two angels who ask her a question. Dear woman, why are you crying? I mean, I don't know if she was more startled. If I put myself in her shoes, I don't know if she's more startled that she sees two angels speaking to her, or if she's more irritated that they're asking her the question. Why are you crying? Isn't it obvious? Something sad has happened. The body is gone. Does no one else find that to be an odd question? I just find it to be an odd question. I would have been irritated, I think, if I was her. And so she gives them a really straightforward answer. But I think the question was meant to get her attention, because as she's turning to leave, she sees someone she thinks is the gardener who asks her the same question a second time. Dear woman, why are you crying? And then he adds a second question. Who are you looking for? Her answer becomes more insistent. Just tell me where he is and I'll go get him. Like, just tell me. I'll solve this problem for myself. Maybe she was a go-getter. But let me remind you who Mary Magdalene is. We don't have a lot of information about her, but Luke chapter 8, verse 2 actually says this about her. Well, it says 8, 1 and 2, it says, soon, while Jesus was basically making a tour of the nearby towns and villages, preaching and announcing the good news about the kingdom of God, he took his 12 disciples with him, along with some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Among them were Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. That's what we know about her. Okay? I mean, if you read the stories of people who have demons cast out of them, it's some pretty weird stuff. So I can imagine that her life was pretty interesting before she met Jesus. And then basically it says she just goes with Jesus and starts witnessing his miracles, starts witnessing all of his teaching. She's right alongside of his disciples. She's named at most of the events, like being present at most of the events leading up to the crucifixion, and she's named as being at the cross itself, like at the crucifixion itself. So she's present for most of Jesus' ministry. She's seen his miracles. She's heard his teaching. She knows all that he declares about himself. She's a faithful follower. She's a grieving friend. Yet in this moment of dark grief, she does not recognize him. I don't know if it's blurry from her tears or if her mascara is in her eyes or what is happening. I'm putting myself in her shoes, friends. I mean, a lot of other people have trouble recognizing him. Maybe he just looked different enough. But I think her not recognizing him is not just because of how he looked. I think it's because of what she's expecting. She is not expecting to see him alive. Even though he's not there, even though other gospel accounts say that the angels say to her, he's not here, he's risen, which we don't know when in that timeline this happened, but she's looking for a dead body. I think the emphasis for John is that there's this moment when Jesus encounters her face to face. Because all it takes from him is one word. All he does is he says her name. He says Mary. And instantly she knows who he is. She knows who he is, and she says, teacher. And she tries to cling to him. Because in that moment, I think all of who she heard him declare about, she heard him declare so many things about himself. And in that moment, it kind of all comes together for her. She probably heard him say her name thousands of times before. And that's what does it. And I think John makes that moment really important for us because it's that moment where everything changes. She becomes the first recorded witness to the resurrected Jesus, and one with a checkered past, and in an age where, get this, women were not even considered legal witnesses. They were not considered legal, credible witnesses, and Jesus chooses to appear to her first. It's not who anyone expected. It's not even who anyone would deem credible. And yet, he says her name. That's so encouraging to me, that I don't have to have it all together or be just who someone expects or even who the world says they're important or they're valuable. Jesus chooses. He chooses who he sees as valuable and he places value on. And he doesn't care what anyone else says. That's what he does for Mary. I've had lots of moments. Let's read the last couple verses. Verses 17 through 19. Sorry, my head's getting ahead of my mouth. Jesus responds to her. He says, don't cling to me, for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. So Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, I have seen the Lord. Then she gave them his message. I mean, it's a pretty simple ending, but what I find interesting about it is now that he said Mary's name, now he reminds her of who he is. And it might seem a little complicated, but I think essentially what he's saying is this. If there's any question, now there's not any question that I'm alive, because you've seen me. But if there's any question about who I am, let me tell you that I am going back to where I came from. He's essentially saying, I am the Son of God. I'm going back to be with my Father. And that meant that he was going back as a conquering king. He wasn't just coming as a suffering servant, someone who died or paid the price. He was going back to his rightful place, that he was a king who had beat sin and death once and for all. And I've had a lot of moments where I felt like I had no idea what God was doing. Or maybe I've even had moments where I wondered where God was in the middle of the mess that I was experiencing. But what I've learned is this. Jesus has a way of meeting us in those places and showing us something about himself that's so much more than what we expected. Because if Jesus really walked out of the grave, if he's really the king who conquered sin and death, then this, friends, is not just Mary's story. This is ours. And so why does it matter? Because to me, that's the big question. It's a great story, but why does the resurrection matter to me, to us? Well, I think it means a few things for us. The first is that I think it means that we're not alone in our grief because he meets us. Grief doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's loss or disappointment. Sometimes it's a quiet realization that life did not turn out the way I thought it was going to. Sometime around November of, I think it was 2013, my second nephew was on the way. My brother and sister-in-law had waited 10 years to have their first baby, and so there was a lot of joy They were the only babies. And I arrived at church on Sunday right around his due date. And my dad pulled me aside and said, I got a call, and Benjamin arrived last night, but he's not alive. He was stillborn. And man, there are things that just to say it's like knock the wind out of me that's not adequate. It's like crushing, that kind of news. I was helping lead a church, so I don't even remember most of the morning. I had to lead music, I had to teach a class, I had to do the things. But I remember two things about that day, besides being told that news. I remember at the end of service looking around kind of in dismay, like, how did we get here? And looking up and seeing a group of men and women gather around me to just hug me and pray with me. And then I looked up, and there was a group around my dad, there was a group around my mom, there was a group around my sister. And they didn't say anything. They didn't say like, well, this is God's plan, because those people are stupid that say stuff like that. I have it on record. They are dumb. Don't listen to them. They just cried with us. That's what they did. They prayed that God would comfort us. And friends, I know that community can feel hard sometimes. There's a lot of great churches in Spokane. But in our short time as a church, man, we've gotten to walk with people through, some of you are crying because you've walked through those moments where we've been hurting and we've been broken and we've done it together. And if you don't have a church family, man, that's my cell. It sucks to do it alone. It's hard to do it together, but it's so much better together. Because here's the second thing that I remember about that morning, besides those people praying for us and hugging us and just letting us cry. I remember a song being sung. If you've been around church, you might have heard it before. It's a really simple song that we sang. And it goes a little like this. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future. And life is worth the living just because he lives. And friends, I could hardly sing it that morning. But you know, that group of people around me, they sang it for me. They reminded me that that wasn't just a song. It wasn't a nice saying to make me feel better. That was a foundational truth that I could build my life and my hope on. It was something for me to cling to. See, we are not alone in our grief. The resurrection means that he understands our grief and he meets us. For Mary, her day began while it was still dark. Her day began in grief. Mary didn't come in faith to that grave. She came with spices. She's not expecting resurrection. She's expecting a dead body. And Jesus meets her there in that expectation. Believing, just what she sees is the reality. It's not after she understands or believes or resolves all her doubt. It's right in the middle of her confusion and her tears. That's when he calls her by name. In John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus has this section of teaching where he makes this powerful declaration. And he says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And I think that statement right there captures when we are in the dark, this is what the resurrection means for us. It means that he is our light. He is our hope, that there is life because of him. The psalmist, Psalm 34:18, he says this. He reminds us that God is near to the brokenhearted and he rescues those whose spirits are crushed. He doesn't just draw near to those whose spirits are crushed. He rescues them. He meets us. Grief, confusion, doubt, disillusionment, even anger. I think we can bring it all to Jesus. I don't think he's scared of those things. I don't think he says, well, you better resolve that and come to me with a better attitude. He's not your dad, okay? No, my dad didn't ever do that. But you know what I'm saying. He can handle it. And he says, come to me even in the middle of that. The same Jesus who met Mary in her dark moments is not distant from yours. Second, the resurrection means that we're not stuck in our sin because he conquered it. I don't think it's too difficult to see ourselves somewhere in Mary's story. She may have been called a lost cause by a lot of people. 7 demons is a lot, too far gone for hope. But common human experience, common to all of us, is brokenness that we can't fix. And I don't just mean I need saving from my circumstances. I mean I need saving from myself. That there is a moment where I am incapable of doing what I know I ought to do and want to do. And that's why there's so much hope for our sin. Romans 6, 9 through 11 says this: we are sure of this because Christ was raised from the dead, and we will never die again. Death no longer has any power over him. When Jesus died, he died to break the power of sin once and for all. He lives for the glory of God. So you also should consider yourselves to be dead to the power of sin and alive to God through Jesus. The cross paid the price for our sin. When he rose again, he broke the power it still had, so that the price never had to be paid again. Like, that's what it means. Like, the people of Israel used to slaughter lambs to cover their sin, to pay the price for their sin. And they did it again and again and again and again. And Jesus says, I paid the price once and for all. When I rose from the dead, that means the price didn't have to be paid. It means I beat death and sin forever. What the cross started, the resurrection finished. That's why it's so important to us. And that changes everything. If sin and death have been defeated, then I don't have to carry the weight of my past anymore. That's what that means. It means that I can really have freedom from shame, from guilt, from trying to be good enough, from trying to earn my way into salvation. I don't have to do that anymore because Jesus paid the price for me. And the third thing, the reason the resurrection is so important for us is because it means that we are not without hope because Jesus is alive. I started with the tension that every story ends in loss because every life runs up against something we can't fix, outwork, or outrun. Our circumstances, sometimes our grief, our disappointment, endless striving that never seems to be enough. We can't fix the condition of our hearts. And I think that can leave us feeling pretty hopeless sometimes. But Jesus is alive, and our faith is built on that truth. The resurrection isn't just proof of who he is. It's not just comfort. It's not just forgiveness. It's power. It's power for us to live differently. Romans 8:11 says that the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is now at work in us. So whatever we still battle, in his abundant grace, he does I say this a lot, because man, the older I get, the more I believe it. He does in us and for us what we are incapable of doing for ourselves. That's what he does. That is the power that the resurrection proves is at work in us. He meets us, he forgives us, he heals and restores us, he helps us live differently with him at the center as his followers. Not just a king, but our king. So now the question isn't just, why is the resurrection important? The question is, what are you going to do with it? Maybe you're still trying to hold it all together, and Easter is the invitation to lay it down. Maybe you're grieving, and you need to know that he sees you, and he's near. Maybe you've come in guilty, carrying the weight of shame and needing forgiveness, and you need a fresh start. Maybe you're disillusioned and doubting, and you don't even know what you believe, and you need an encounter with Jesus for yourself. You might be in the dark, but Jesus is here and he wants to meet you. Salvation isn't something that you achieve. It's something you receive. And the invitation at Easter is to trust what Jesus has already done for you by putting your faith in him. So my invitation to you is simple. In the words of Romans 10, verses 9 and 10, Paul the Apostle says, if you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it's with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it's with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved. And so I want to give you I've given you a simple invitation this morning. Out of respect for everyone around you, would you close your eyes for just a moment this morning? We do this a lot of weeks at Venture. I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but if you say, I just want to be able to pray for you, but if you say today, I need a fresh start, I need to start a relationship with Jesus, I need the forgiveness that you talked about, I need Jesus to meet me. If that's you, would you just make eye contact with me? I just want to pray for you. Nothing weird. Okay. Anyone else? I just want to pray for you. Maybe you say, I'm in the middle of a circumstance where I really need Jesus to offer me hope. I know him, but I really need hope. If that's you, would you just raise your hand for me today so I can pray for you? Okay. Yeah. Jesus, in the resurrection story, you met Mary, of all people, right in the middle of her grief and her questions, in the middle of a really dark story. I'm grateful that that's not just her story. I'm grateful that because you rose from the dead, that you can meet us here today, that you're alive, and that you transform us by your power and your goodness. And so would you do that today? People who are saying, I need to start a relationship with you, Lord, would you meet them as they confess your name and ask forgiveness for their sins? For those who need hope, God, would you meet them right there in their chair? Would you, with your presence, with your peace, with people that are around them to lift them up and offer them comfort and sing the song that they can't sing themselves? Jesus, would you be our hope and our life? Because I know that's who you are today. And help us be a people that are transformed by you and that everyone knows it. In your good and holy name we pray. Amen. Would you stand with me and sing with us as the team leads us?